So imposter syndrome really is the tip of the iceberg. It's the signs and the symptoms of what's going on for people. You put them all in the chat box before. I'm not going for a promotion. I'm not speaking up in a meeting. I'm comparing myself to colleagues and other people. Those are the signs and symptoms, but the vast majority of what's actually going on is underneath the surface. The biggest part of the iceberg isn't the tip, it's what lies beneath. And that's what we're going to be having a look at next. So we all have different voices in our heads. This is perfectly normal. And we move seamlessly between these modes every single day. So one voice might say, it's sun shining outside. It'd be really nice to go for a walk at lunchtime, maybe even eat outside. And another voice in your head says, hang on, wait a minute. You've got over 100 emails in your inbox. I think we should really be having lunch at the desk, going through the emails at the same time, and you mustn't look up until it's all finished. Now, depending upon which voice is strongest determines which action you take next. And I hope it's not just me, but you all know these voices, right? You all know that you've recognized that you have this different kind of rhetoric inside, and sometimes they argue. Give me a little yes in the chat box if you know what I'm talking about. Surely it's not just me. Yes. So everybody has these different voices, these sub-personalities, but not that many people know about them. So you're in the special club today. Now, lots of people talk about these sub-personalities. I'm coming at it from the perspective of a technique called voice dialogue, but there are so many of these techniques from lots of different studies, whether that's positive intelligence, internal family systems, compassionate inquiry. Even Eckhart Tolle himself talked about these discrete selves within us. So when we're born, most of us think we're just this ego, this like one internal narrative inside, but we're so much more than that. And as a child, we're going to experiment with many different selves, but determined by our family situation, whether we are the firstborn, the middleborn, the lastborn, in a family situation, the culture we grow up in, a whole heap of other factors determines which 4 to 6 selves become our primary self system. You can imagine this like the armor that we put on in order to be able to feel safe or try to get to safety and function in the world the best we can. So when we have imposter syndrome, the 4 to 6 that I see most prevalently are these ones here. So we're going to take each one in turn, and I want you to let me know in the chat box if this one is relevant to you. The reason why I've got this police person here is because the inner critic itself is a self, but it also has a special relationship with each one of these in turn. And when we break the rules of one of these different selves, the inner critic is like the one who goes, oh, you've broken the rule of this one. I'm going to step in and tell you off so that you don't do that again. So say, for example, I'm doing this talk right now and we were in person and someone was at the back of the room with their phone and they're scrolling around their phone. My pleaser might be going wild, might go, oh, that means that they don't like me, they're not enjoying it, I'm not doing a good enough job, oh no, I've broken the top rule of the pleaser, I'm displeasing someone. And therefore my inner critic will step in and say, you're doing a really bad job, you need to engage more, you need to do X, Y, Z next time, or you need to avoid this, don't ever do another presentation in your whole life, you're clearly no good at it. It will say these kind of things to you. So let's take each one in turn. So the first one is this inner critical voice. This is the voice of telling you off, making you the bad one, beating you up with a stick, and that comparisonitis with other people. It's the one that when you pass the mirror and it sees a wrinkle, it says, oh, you need to go and get that special new eye cream and get rid of all of the wrinkles. Or you step on the scales and it says, oh, it's not good enough. It's going up, it's not going down. It's the one where you are in a meeting and someone says something amazing idea and you have that comparison of, I never have any good ideas, or I can't speak up in the meeting, and it tells you off. So this critical voice, always watch out for comparisonitis with other people. And they all have helpful parts to them. So the inner critic is helpful because it kind of keeps you on your toes and it makes you the best version of yourself. But when it's in the unhelpful range, it can be really debilitating and make you feel really bad about yourself. So let me know in the chat box who here knows that they have quite a strong inner critic. Let me know with a little me or yes in the chat box. Yes, unfortunately, yes. Okay, don't worry, we're going to go through some the voice methodology to sort this out. So don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging there. The next one is the perfectionist. So the perfectionist is the part of you that has really high standards for everything that you do. In a home context, the perfectionist will hate to be at home and someone come unexpectedly and your house is a mess and the washing up's in the sink. The perfectionist will hate that. The perfectionist likes to be on time for things, otherwise it feels anxious and nervous about that. But in a work context, the perfectionist could be the blinking cursor syndrome, where the next sentence has to be perfect. It has to be right. You can't just get something out onto the page. I think about all those people writing up their PhDs and things like that. The perfectionist can have you work really hard. It can go in conjunction with the pusher and say, we have to make it perfect. There we have to put more hours into it. And something that should take 30 minutes might take you 5 hours. Or it can go the other way and it can go into the protector controller and say, oh, if we have to do this piece of work, I might get some challenging feedback. I might just avoid and procrastinate on that a little bit longer until the final deadline. So it can have you actually in procrastination as well. And I had a client who said they had emails and they knew one of the emails in the inbox was from someone who had some, critical feedback for one of their grants in there. And they knew what it was, but they would not open that email. And that email had been there for 2 weeks and they still wouldn't open it, even knowing what it was. All running through their mind was all of the challenging feedback and the story around what that feedback was going to be. So that's the perfectionist and breaking the rules of the perfectionist. So if you feel substandard in any way, it breaks the rules of the perfectionist. So let me know in the chat box if the perfectionist is you. And Rachel says, I have the best perfectionist working in conjunction with my rule maker, my pusher, my protector controller. You've got it all, Rachel. And it's not that we can't have these. A perfectionist is great for having good standards for our work, but it's just if it's unhelpful, like avoidance, extra pushing when it gets in the unhelpful range. Sophie says, unfortunately, it sums me up to a T. And Lorna says, me? There's lots. Yes, I mean, academia is rife with perfectionism. I'm not going to lie. So yes, and Lily says, people dropping in on me and unexpected is my worst nightmare. That used to be me, Lily, but after I had kids, I kind of relaxed a little bit. Yes, but more so outside of work. Yes, and Lisa says I struggle to delegate because of it. Really great point, Lisa, because if you try to delegate to somebody else and you know that they're not going to do a good enough job or they've proved that they can't do it as well as you, your perfectionist won't want to delegate either. And that can lead to some challenging things around work-life balance. Okay, the next one is the protector controller. So this is the part of you that wants to keep you cool, distant, protected, safe from other people. It has you put people at arm's length and gets you in avoidance. It has you think about all the what could happen. It projects into the future anxiety of everything. Oh, I've got a meeting next week, big X in the calendar, all the things that are going to be challenging and worrying around that. So it has you preempting situations. And it doesn't want you to feel vulnerable, hurt, or scared. And it wants to avoid those feelings at all costs. So it has you in avoidance. So who here knows that they have quite a strong protector controller? Let me know in the chat box if that's you. You can join my team. Yes, says Tracy and Lily and Lorna. Yes. Okay, good. The next one is the pusher, one of my personal favorites. It's akin to being superhuman, superwoman, superman. The pusher is the one that always has a really long to-do list. And even if you finish the to-do list, it will find more to add to that to-do list because you could always be doing more, always be doing better. And it can drive your performance unmercifully. If you try to relax, couch potato, sit down for a moment. The pusher will have you stand up again and go, oh, you didn't empty the dishwasher. You need to do this. And it can really have you thinking all the time, but also doing all the time. So being a human, instead of a human being a human doing. So the pusher doesn't actually care what it pushes. It just wants you to push on things, whether that's first to the ski lifts on holiday, or whether it's a big, long work to-do list or admin tasks. So, and Sally's saying, oh yes, that's about the protect controller. Preempting situations is a huge issue for me. So who here knows they also have a strong pusher and can join my pusher team? Okay, Dominique, there's a lot of you out there. Sarah's saying, oh goodness, 100% me. Yes, okay. Wow, so many pushers here today. And Lily, you will be all of these things. We all have these discrete selves within us. It's whether or not that you're strongly identified with them as a primary self. And Jessica says yes, but then have phases of burnout. Exactly. So when we have a burnout, the pusher actually becomes disowned. It can't be an operation anymore. And a different self comes to the forefront. Usually something like apathetic self or couch potato, where it's like, I just don't have it in me anymore. So it kind of does a seesaw effect. Okay, we also have the pleaser. So the pleaser is the part of you that wants to build really great rapport with other people, wants to be liked no matter what, says yes to everything. So remember that proving stage of the unconscious phase of the intentional careers journey. The pleaser is in play if you're doing pleasing, proving, and it hates to be in conflict, hates being around conflict, and says yes all the time. The thing about the pleaser is, pleasers are often really giving and nice people, but when we give from a place of unconditionality, it's generosity. But when we give from the pleaser, sometimes there's a silent hook or condition. If I say yes to this thing and I work extra hours, in return, you have to praise me, you have to like me, you have to keep me in my position, whatever it is. So there can sometimes be conditions there from the pleaser. So who here knows that they have a strong pleaser? Let me know in the chat box. Tracy says yes, yes, yes. Really pushing back on that one, says Lorna. Yeah. Okay, good. Jen says, I think this is the one I resonate with so far. Yeah. And Dominica says, me as well, I can't handle people being possibly upset with me. That's another hallmark of it as well, Dominica. Okay, and finally we have the rule maker. This one is quite sneaky. So often we think like, oh, I don't have many rules around me. But when we really start to look into it, we can have some really strong rules that we live our lives by. Having a strong rule maker makes things the uncontrollable controllable. It's being black or white thinking, good or bad, right or wrong. And it can have us in superiority. So while the inner critic makes us feel less than other people, and you can have that one too, the rule maker makes you feel better than other people because either you follow the rules or they should follow the rules, but you can do something else. So for example, you'll notice this if you're driving a car and then someone does something, I don't know, like they pull out really quickly and too close to you. They've broken the rule. They're not supposed to do that. And your rule maker will be irate about it. They clearly just can't drive. So you'll notice this kind of thing, or people eating with the wrong knife and fork. What's going on? People wearing gold and silver jewelry on one hand. How very dare they? So just note for yourself if you have a strong rule maker. Let me know in the chat box if this one is for you too. And Sally says, the pleaser is a hard one as I have this trait, but my rule means I have to say no to things people want sometimes and I feel awful doing it. So imagine you have a little bit more space from your pleaser. It would make your job so much easier to just not have the emotion attached to saying no.